Good morning.
Good morning.
Get my screen up here. Everyone can see it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, my name is Amanda Singleton. I'm the Customer Care and Support Manager at Rainier Connect. I've been here for 21 years, specializing in the customer experience. As my title says, I manage the customer care and support team, and I also have our quality assurance team, which does a lot of the back end, behind the scenes, system and process type activity. And my partner today.
I'm Lorie Hills, and I am Sales and Marketing Manager at Rainier Connect. I have been in this role for about 10 years now, and just specialize in communication, public relations, marketing, and the commercial sales. My background is primarily in public relations and for high-tech firms. And so this has been kind of my year to shine at the company. We've had things come at us every which way, so it's been a great experience. And a huge disaster avoided, right?
So we'll start and share with you just a little bit about our company, just to give you some perspective on who we are and what we do. We are over 100 years old, just striving to remain in demand as technology and how we utilize it changes and progresses. We provide data, phone, and TV services, and we provide them over a variety of platforms: copper, fiber, and coax. And our networks are not all the same, and we've grown by acquisition. So fiber in one footprint might have a slightly different delivery than it does in a different footprint. So we just have to stay on our toes and keep our teams on their toes. We have ILEC and CLEC service areas. So of course, there's different challenges, benefits, and obstacles in each of those areas. We are very growth focused, as I mentioned, through acquisitions and of course through market development.
And our crisis really began as we took over a municipally owned network. We had been on this network previously, and we had been in negotiations for about 4 years prior. So the closure and transfer of responsibility was set to happen on April 1st of this year, and it did. And it doubled our customer footprint. And so we grew by about 50% at that time. At the same time, on that network was another ISP, and they had 9,000 customers. And those customers were essentially abandoned. And then the third prong of this crisis was that we had a pandemic, and our governor shut down right around April 1st, our local state. And so we went into a lockdown. It was a stay home, stay safe order. We closed our lobbies. We had to find some work from home resources for some of our staff where it was feasible. And all at the same time that our customer base grew, calls were spiking, and we had 9,000 abandoned customers that we had to get service quickly. And they were all afraid of what was happening to their communications during this time.
So the crisis is here. We couldn't anticipate that it was coming and that all of these things would collide at the same time. Every crisis is a little different. Maybe it's a tornado, a storm, a natural disaster, or as Lorie described ours, a combination of things all happening at the same time. So it's here, and what did we need to do first to manage through? We needed to listen. We needed to proactively listen to our customers so that we could adjust and create a better experience for them. We did things like sitting down on the call center floor and listening to the live calls with the reps, hearing the conversations and the struggles. We read the form submission emails as they came in so we could read what the customers were looking for, and listen to the voicemails as they were coming in, so we could really have a feel for what the customers were looking for. We heard their concerns, and one of the biggest concerns with our lobbies all of a sudden closing without notice was how to handle equipment. We have, it's a revolving door, customers coming into our offices. They want to pick up a modem. Somebody's getting new service. They don't want to pay to have it shipped. We do a lot of self-installs. So they just come in and pick up the modem. And we couldn't do that. And we certainly couldn't manage that volume. And as part of that stay home and stay safe order, we were instructed to do as much contactless activity as possible. So we decided what we could do to get around that obstacle was we hired temporary employees, and we're still doing this today. We started this at the end of March, beginning of April, and are still doing it today. We have what we're calling porch drop technicians, and they're employees that we've hired that have a job list every day, and they are dropping equipment off at customers' porches, in logoed Rainier Connect bags. They set it on the porch. They go back to the car, they call the customer, and they say, hey, your modem's there. You can call and have it activated now. We're doing the same thing for pickups if somebody is returning equipment or canceling service. And we're doing this complimentary so that they're not having to pay an expense to do that. While we were listening to the call volumes, which were growing at a rapid pace, 9,000 customers feeling abandoned and wanting to make sure they're established with somebody. At the same time, this network had over 12,000 cable TV customers, so they're new to us and they want to have conversations with us. And our existing customer base that was familiar with us had concerns and questions about their services as well. And what we knew was that when we couldn't keep up with the call volumes and they were getting voicemail, that was causing even more panic and they were becoming more frantic. And so we reached out to a vendor partner who takes our tier 1 tech support calls and has for the last 10 years. And I happen to know that they take customer care related calls for companies. And so I called them and said, we really need help. How can you help us? And so we worked together to provide them all of the information and route some of our call traffic their way so that they could help us with the calls. They actually had to hire some staff themselves to accommodate the increased call volumes that we were sending them. But without them, I feel like we could still be returning voicemail calls today. So being able to make that really snap decision and lean on them was really helpful. Communication is, I don't think I've ever had a moment where I haven't talked about communication and how important it was. And we're really lucky to have Lorie. Like she said, it was her year to shine, and we really relied on her to communicate, not just with our customers, but internally also. Because of the pandemic and because of these volumes that were so much greater than we were used to handling, we wanted our staff to feel really confident that we had a plan and know what our next move was going to be. So keeping that communication regular was, and being really transparent with our staff was really helpful. And then we had to communicate, of course, with our customers. And because we weren't able to have a one-on-one conversation with all of them, we relied on all of the other forms of communication, all of the media, the communicating with our city council was actually really important and new after we took over operational control of the network because, it previously had been operated by the city. So they wanted to have updates on how we were handling all that had been thrown our way. Twitter, Facebook, the press releases, our website. Again, the goal was just to have a really consistent message, and wherever somebody tried to reach out to us, they knew what to expect under the circumstances, and it was a consistent message. It's really important to remember our vendors in our communication. The support vendor that I mentioned, we we treat as another department in our company as a norm because they are handling our tier 1 support calls, and in some cases might be the only representative that a customer talks to in any given year, not actually somebody here locally in our office. And so now we had some additional information to share with them. So we really just had to treat them like another member of our team, another department of the company, and make sure that we sent all of the information as it was changing so that they could also give that consistent message to our customers.
And it was changing quickly.
Really quickly.
It wasn't a stagnant message time.
No. And it was all uncharted, territory. But pandemic is not something that most of us have had to experience in our lifetime. So there was no example for us to reference or say, well, what did we do last time? We had to lean on our team, and it's important to know what the strengths are on our team, so that we could quickly make the changes. We could listen to all the calls that we wanted to, but if I'm not firsthand talking to the customers, I don't always have the best solutions. So we got a lot of feedback from different members of the teams that were customer facing. We still had technicians in the field. We still have technicians in the field, going into customers' homes. We have the reps on the phone. So the feedback that they were able to provide was way better than any idea I probably would have come up with, just trying to tackle the problem. Understanding the needs of our customer really helped us navigate through all of this. With a flood of calls that we had, we really had to break it apart and tackle each piece of it to give the best experience. So of course we had this group of 9,000 customers that were feeling really abandoned. And so we had to do our best to get the message out to them that we will be returning your phone call. We will not interrupt your service. We understand that you're scared and uncertain about your relationship with us right now. And so we had to keep hitting that message home because they were calling repeatedly, not once or twice, but sometimes 5 and 6 times, and submitting, emails and form submissions. So we really had to let them know that we were going to take care of them, and we had to adjust and figure out how to be more efficient in responding to these customers. So we have an online order management system that we had launched a little while before the pandemic, but it wasn't, we didn't have really high volumes using the order management system. So we had to get really intimate with the system and figure out how we could use it to our advantage. So we were directing customers there so they could establish their own account with us, choose their pricing and speed packages that suited their needs if they couldn't reach us by phone. And then the vendor that I mentioned that was now taking customer care calls for us, because of CP&I and red flag matters, they don't actually have access to our system where they could generate an order for the customers. So we set them up so that they could use this online order tool as though they were a customer and collect and submit all the information, which would generate a service order for our internal team to review, and then call and confirm the information with the customer, make any adjustments. But it took a lot of the legwork out for us and made our interaction with the customer shorter and more efficient. As I mentioned before, it was creating panic for the customers that they were getting voicemail. So again, this vendor took that, took the panic out for the customers by talking to somebody, a real person, having a conversation that we would respond, and that our response times that were previously immediate, we answered live, were much longer than normal, but that we would still be getting to them. The customers that came over to us from this city operated network a lot of them were set up on auto pay. So we had an increase of phone calls. They were concerned their services would be interrupted because their auto pay was no longer set up. Again, CP&I and red flag prevented us from converting that data from the system that the city operated in. And so we also had several thousand customers calling for a different matter, and that was to establish payment and be sure their services weren't interrupted. On top of all of that, we had signed the FCC pledge to keep America connected, which I think brought a lot of customers to ease and gave them some relief that services wouldn't be interrupted. Their services, as you all know, had a new value and priority in their homes as they went home to work, went home to do school. Their only form of entertainment was now at home, and often, via services that they had received from us. So having these successful vendor relationships before the crisis is probably what helped us navigate through this situation without, falling on our faces. But of course, those relationships had to start long before our crisis began. And so how we accomplished that, what we feel we accomplished successfully, is we made sure that our management team was on the same page and had an understanding of the projects that we were working on as a company, and that we were all on the same page. So we did this. We started, I don't know, 3 or 4, maybe 5, I've lost track of time, years ago, by having a managers meeting every week outside of the managers meeting. And for most people, that's making you roll your eyes and say, yeah, right, I do not have time for another meeting. And it felt like a lot at first, but this was our opportunity to really get into the weeds with our projects and talk about the things that the boss doesn't really want to talk about at the managers meetings. He wants the high level, and we need to talk about how we're going to get to that end goal that he set in front of us. So a specific project that we that worked on that this really made it obvious that this was the right thing for us to do as a team, is we made a decision to retire our legacy TV platform on our network, migrate to a streaming platform. And while we did that, it felt really painful to our customer care team and our field technicians. And so when we were meeting regularly, we could map out the whole project as managers, bring it back to our teams, and make sure everybody aligned and understood how each moving part worked. So while our network team was, preparing for this, the silver lining in doing this project was that we freed up all of these channels on our coax network that allowed for us to offer and sell significantly increased data speeds on our coax network. And the legacy TV was expiring. We had equipment that was no longer supported. We had regular service issues. And so we were able to offer a better product to our customer that they were really happy with, and offer these new speeds. But by having these project teams and understanding all of the pieces of the project and why this painful conversion to a new product brought benefit elsewhere, was a really big win with our teams. They felt like they were all working on the same project. They understood if one team felt unavailable or really tied up, they knew that they were working towards the same goal as us, and that they were not disconnected. So that's been a really big win for us. As part of that, we have made a change to how we select our vendors. Rather than a sometimes more traditional siloed approach where I choose vendors that assist with customer service type items, and Lorie's choosing hers for marketing, and our network manager is choosing his, we actually approach it as a team. Whether we're looking for a new piece of equipment or a new product to sell or upgrade to, we as a team meet with each of the vendors. We bring in customer facing staff from each of our teams, and we kind of create a project team for just that activity. We bring the vendors in to do demos so that everybody can compare all of our options. Everybody can weigh in on the benefits and how it might work best for their roles and their responsibilities. Once we select a vendor, oftentimes there's, they give us if it's a piece of hardware, they give us some sample hardware so that we can try it out. We give that to the people that are on the team so that they can really get their hands on it and have some real feedback. And then once we make a selection with a vendor, if it's a product or a service, we provide comp services to all of our staff where it's, financially makes sense. So as an example, we have a whole home Wi-Fi. When we selected that vendor, we selected a number of employees to take that whole home Wi-Fi setup to their own homes so they could set it up themselves, utilize it at home, troubleshoot it at home. And then they're really bought in, and it's a real big win. It creates a lot of excitement inside of the company. And then when it comes time to launch and sell, they're really excited. They have personal stories. And they just get excited about it. We put up the goals on our dashboard, and they feel like it's theirs, that they did this and that this was their baby, their project. The whole home Wi-Fi, just as another example, our outside plant team keeps extra setups on their truck, and they're some of our best salespeople because they'll be in the customer's home. They're familiar with it. They see how it eliminates troubles, and they're often adding to an install this whole home Wi-Fi setup. When working with our vendors that we've so carefully selected, we find it's really important to understand what their priorities are, how their team members' roles fit into our projects, and what their successes will be. So as an example of this, it took a lot of time negotiating and getting to the point that we took over the operational control of this city-owned and operated network on April 1st. And so even more than a year before that, we started the conversation with our billing vendor. We let them know what we were looking at doing and how they could help us with that. But we kept them updated every step of the way because we knew that to accommodate our timelines, they were making really big adjustments on their timelines to make the right teams available and to help us meet our goals. So we really valued their time and made sure that we were as least impactful to them as possible to get what we needed in the end. Any of our products, services, software solutions that we utilize, we have a tendency as a company to become a power user. I think our vendors know that they're going to get feedback from us, and not just know that they're going to get feedback, but that it's going to be useful and helpful feedback. We ask a lot of questions. When we launch something, we make sure that we're dedicating all of our resources to whatever it is that we're getting from a vendor so that we can take full advantage of what they have to offer. We're always ready to be a beta with any of our vendors and provide them feedback. And we also find that the benefit for us is it sort of allows us to drive some of their future development because we're giving feedback on how it's a benefit to us. Sometimes we have to be persistent. Sometimes something is really important to us and we maybe don't always get the answer we want the first time. So we are politely persistent to get what we're hoping for in the end. And then we make it known to them that we're really committed to being a loyal partner to them, that it's worth our time, to give back to them a little bit. And some of those things include their new potential customers. It is not uncommon for us to get a request to be a reference to share with another company like ours how we utilize the services that a particular vendor has to provide. So building the crisis ready team, that has to happen way before the crisis presents itself. And of course, we don't actually know when that crisis will present itself. So this really begins for us when we're hiring and interviewing people, when we're doing our interviews and making our selections, we're really keeping in mind, are these the people that we want, for better and worse, for the long haul? Are these the people that potentially want to promote within our company, and are just really excited to be here? So probably for 15 years, I've been interviewing and hiring people, and I have probably interviewed a significant number and hired a significant number of people that maybe weren't the best fit. And so I've definitely learned some things along the way. There are two particular questions that everybody that I interview with, we always ask, and we're always looking for something really specific. The first one is we always ask, no matter what position, we always ask them to tell us about a time that they had a unique problem or request from a customer and what they did to solve it. So what we're looking for there is somebody that is creative and thinks outside of the box, and doesn't just hand off to the manager or the person sitting next to them. So an example of something to me that was a really good answer is we hired a CSR who now works in our quality assurance team. And when I asked her that question, she told me about a story where she worked at a Home Depot or, like store, and a customer had called in looking for a barbecue. They were having a family event that night and theirs died, and they needed a new one right away. And they called to check the availability and confirmed that it was in, and they got to the store, and lo and behold, something happened and the barbecue wasn't there. The computer was wrong, somebody bought it, whatever it wasn't there. And they were really upset because they were on a short time schedule and they had done their part to call and confirm it was available. So in the story, the CSR said, well, I couldn't let them walk out mad, and I couldn't let their family party be ruined tonight. So I asked them if they could hang out with me for just a few minutes. And she called around to other stores in their chain that were within close proximity, and found one that had one in inventory. But she didn't just find one that had one in inventory. She then asked them to take it to the next level and assemble the barbecue so that when the customer arrived to that site, they could just load it into their truck and take it home and start using it right away. That's the kind of experience we want for our customers. So when I'm interviewing somebody, if they can give me a real specific story and they didn't hand it off to the manager, that's always a really good sign to me. The second question we always ask is looking to see if the person we're hiring is able to actually hear the customer. So sometimes with an angry customer, they call in and they're just really upset and they just kind of dump on you. What we really want to happen, the best way to handle that is to really hear why the customer is upset. We can't throwing a credit at them or escalating them to the manager is seldom what the customer really wants. So as an example of that, when somebody calls to Disneyland and says, well, what time is the 10 o'clock parade? They know what time the 10 o'clock parade is. That's not really what they're asking. What they're asking is, what time should I arrive? Where should I sit? Should I bring anything along with me? So we just want to make sure that we're hiring people that are really hearing our customers, what their needs are, so that they get a really good experience with us. And then the last thing I do when we're doing interviews is we always call on the references. And I just think it's really important not to discount what references have to say. Some of the red flags I've found when calling on references are they don't answer and they never call back. That often tells me that they didn't know they were going to be a reference, or they really didn't want to speak on behalf of that person. Other times they're kind of short and rude. There are employers who can only verify employment, but often can answer one question for me. And that question is always, are they eligible for rehire? Because that single word can help me make a decision. And then other times I hear really great things from references that help me identify that it's that really creative, problem-solving person that I'm looking for. I've hired a couple of different support technicians, and their references really stick out in my mind. One of them was doing IT at a warehouse of some sort, And the coworker described him as a workhorse, that while his job was IT, if he had no burning matters and there was a freight truck that needed unloaded, he never hesitated to come help his teammates, even though nowhere in the IT job description did it say unloading freight. And I thought, well, that's the kind of guy I want to have on my team. And sure enough, he's the kind of guy I like having on my team. Another one, a reference described him as the go-to person. Anytime I don't know how to do something or I want to learn more about something, I always call Chuck because he always knows the answer and he's going to explain it to me in a way that I can understand. Again, somebody I really want on my team and is still on my team, and I'm really happy to have him. So while we're navigating this crisis, and we've been really lucky to have built a great team around us, it's really important that we stay true to who we are as a company when we're navigating this. We had a lot of challenges thrown our way, but every so often we had to kind of pause and make sure we were doing the things that Rainier Connect would do as a company under relatively normal circumstances. So some of the things that we did during our most recent crisis here with the pandemic and the addition of 9,000 abandoned customers was to hear the needs in our community. And the needs in our community were really obvious. There were a lot of students and student families who previously did not have data services at their home. It was a financial burden for them, and it was a luxury that they couldn't afford, but it was now a necessity. So we worked with the school districts in our various service footprints and worked with the school districts to identify the families that had a real need to get their students connected. And early in the pandemic, we did this in early April.
Yeah.
It was right out of the gate. We created a program called Students Connect, and we launched it out to the school districts that are in our service area. And we're providing completely free service to these students that didn't have service at home where we could get services to their home. We're providing the equipment. The technician is doing a tech install and making sure the Wi-Fi is working in the home so the student connect their school provided Chromebook. And although it was early in the pandemic and we didn't know very much about it, we decided we don't know how long this is going to last. We don't know what the end is going to look like. So let's give confidence that we really want to support the students. And we said that we're creating this program and it's going to run through the end of the school year, June 2021, or longer. But we wanted to have a long enough stretch that people felt that it was worth the time to get connected and signed up with us so that their students can be connecting. And of course, it's had a really positive impact. Our businesses are also, our business customers are also suffering through all of this. And so Lorie's commercial team has worked with the individual businesses. Each of their needs looks a little bit different. No business is the same. But we were also able to support one of our local chambers who opened a business resource center as a temporary location for the businesses to come in and get assistance with access to things like the plexiglass for their point of sale stations or the masks and the gloves. That stuff was really hard to access in the spring. And so what we could do was we could provide data services to that business resource center, and we made some donations of large monitors and other equipment they needed to make it a functional space and useful for the businesses that were using it. In the middle of all of this, we wanted to make sure to keep taking good care of our teams. We wanted them to be positive and happy coming to work. And so some of the things we did there just to keep the general morale up, we do an annual training every year on customer experience. It's a training that our staff really enjoys. They look forward to doing it. It is a very non-traditional training, gives them a whole day off the phones and away from their desks in a really fun space. And so the vendor was up for it. And so we moved forward with it, even though it looked and felt a little bit different. And I think it was really appreciated. The staff just really enjoyed that break. Of course, we did things like bringing in individualized lunches so that, food makes everybody happy. And so the spontaneous lunches have been really appreciated. We've done goodie bags to different teams with, little gift cards and fun gadgets in it. And as we grew our customer base and doubled our size and staff, we also took it as an opportunity to review our schedules for our call center. So something that we previously couldn't scale before was to offer 410s and to offer earlier and later schedules. So we introduced the 410s and people loved the opportunity to have that. We also kind of polled all of our team members and asked what their schedule preference was, so that when we published a new schedule, we could do our best to accommodate everybody's first priority on scheduling. And that's been really successful and brought a lot of happiness to the team. And then, after a crisis and things have gotten back to normal, I think the first 6 months of it was probably the heaviest lifting. But we're spending time now figuring out how to get back to normal. Things were a little chaotic. We had to set aside some of our normal operations, pulling our CSR calls and listening to them and doing call coaching, our internal metrics. We just had to pause a lot to kind of survive. So now we want to shift back to thriving and doing the things that we do really well. However, with a significantly larger customer base and teams twice the size they were just 9 months ago, we have to look at how some of that normal looks a little bit different now. And again, we're able to lean on some of our vendors that we've got really great relationships with. And that same vendor that does our customer experience training is now also going to do call coaching for us on our customer care team. It was no longer possible for our supervisor and myself to pull the volume of calls and coach the volume of individuals that we now have on the team. And then, of course, we are doing a lot of time reflecting and looking back on these last several months and asking ourselves, what were our wins? What were some of the things that we could have done better? And how can we apply those lessons moving forward? And heaven forbid, the next time we're faced with some giant, crazy crisis. So that's kind of our story. I don't know if there's any questions, but that's us and that's how we managed.